Washington football. Woo! Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Burgundy Zone. I am your host, Kyle, and I'm joined by my co-host, Michael Reed. Not sure if Hall is going to be joining us this evening, but we hope he's able to stop by sometime in the near future. The Burgundy Zone is a part of the Frederick Podcast Network. You can find out more by going to www.listofrederick.com. We are rejoined from Pro Football Focus, Mr. Nick Akridge. Thank you for joining us this evening, sir. How are you doing?
I'm good, man. Thanks for having me, as always.
Yeah, it's another rainy Thursday. Hopefully we get some sunlight here soon. But speaking of sunlight, Nick, Pro Football Focus came out with their early breakout candidates for each team next season for 2023. And I read this on Commander's Wire and USA Today, and they named Jahan Dotson as the early breakout candidate. One could say he kind of broke out this year, but what do you think about that?
Yeah, for Commanders fans, we kind of have already seen him sort of, break out. More so for the national media, you don't really see him talked about as much with the same kind of group as Olave and Wilson and all that. And I still think Olave and Wilson had a better year, but I mean, Jahan Dotson missed some games, which definitely hurts that. Olave did as well, but I was really pleasantly surprised with what he did this past year. I was lower on him. I was a huge Chris Olave fan, still am. But I think the trade, to trade down and still get Jahan Dotson, who has kind of solidified himself as a top end sort of talent and a very good wide receiver already in this league. So not surprised by that. I think, you'll see people kind of, be surprised next year by him. But I think most Commanders fans kind of realize that, he's already shown that he can be a very, very good receiver.
And he missed 5 games this season, had 7 touchdowns, over 500 yards receiving. It was pretty dang good with all the quarterback situation here.
Yeah, definitely.
He was also pretty clutch, if you guys remember. Jahan Dotson, week 1, he caught that game winner, and then he did a few other things, of course, against the Giants. But let's put on your GM cap, or hey, let's break out your crystal ball or smoke your DMT, whatever you got to do to see into the future. What do you think the Commanders ultimately do at quarterback? Do you think that they do end up rolling with Sam Howell? Do you think that they bring in a veteran? Do you think that they make a move in the draft early? What's
or what would you do, Nick?
Yeah. What would you do? But also,
because you've been adamant in saying that we've only seen a limited sample size of Sam Howell, and marrying Sam Howell and saying that he's going to be a franchise quarterback is far-fetched at this point.
Yeah. Every day I feel like I have a new idea on what the hell they should do, but like where they are with the ownership situation and, possibly a lame duck situation with the coaching staff, it's put the offseason in such a weird spot. The franchise itself is in a very, very strange spot. I think the safest thing to do and the best thing to do for Rivera, possibly on his last year, is roll with Sam Howell, see what you have. I've seen it a lot everywhere. See what you have. If he's terrible, you're picking high next year. You have a new coach, hopefully new GM, hopefully new owner at that point. Get a complete fresh restart at that point. If Sam Howell is good and turns into a guy who could be a top 15 quarterback in the NFL, which some people are saying, I haven't seen enough yet. He was my quarterback too, but it was a very lackluster class last year. But if he kind of breaks out and plays really well next year, then you have the potential to get the guy that we've been looking for so long. And again, you don't know if he's good. They kind of hover around 500 again. That gives Ron another year, but then you have a new owner coming in and new offensive coordinator. If this offensive coordinator is somebody out of the building and comes in and makes his offense look really good, there's so much up in the air. I don't really know what they're going to do. I've tried guessing who they'd pick as offensive coordinator, but I think they would stick with Zampese and have him be offensive coordinator, call plays for a year. It doesn't work. Sam Howell doesn't work, then you just have the entire franchise starting completely over from ground zero.
Yeah, I know. And Hall last week Monday made a great point saying that, just because Sam Howell does bad, this team will still win a number of games to be out of the quarterback race and aren't going to have a top pick. But the fact is, you could put yourself in the Bills kind of situation when they were high enough to where they could trade up for Josh Allen and didn't break their back. That's the other argument I would have.
No, I mean, I kind of went on a little Twitter rant thread this past weekend, I believe, just kind of talking about quarterbacks and drafting them in general. And every single year there's people in my mentions just yelling at me about, this quarterback doesn't have it. He doesn't have it. none of us know. Like, we don't know about these prospects. We can do our best to kind of evaluate them and project what they are going forward. There are very few slam dunks. You have Trevor Lawrence, you have Andrew Luck in the past. I thought Joe Burrow was a slam dunk. You don't know. And a lot of these teams, the Mahomes went to 10th, Josh Allen was 7th. Like, you have these guys that you just bet on their traits and you get the right development behind them. And that's how you build these quarterbacks. Obviously, it hasn't worked out for Washington, but that doesn't mean you should stop trying. Like, you can't hit a home run if you aren't swinging. Like, you have to keep trying. And in my opinion, nothing in this league matters without a quarterback. We've seen it for literally decades here now. Like, they go in through this constant cycle of rebuild, be very bad, rebuild again, and they're mediocre, pushing for a playoff spot, might get the wild card, and then we start back over. So I think the key to that is just getting the guy. And the more, attempts you take at that, I think the better chance you have.
Yeah, and I will argue that I don't think Washington has ever really had a franchise quarterback dating back to like Sonny Jurgensen. You know what I mean?
No, I mean, they haven't. And that was an argument I got from a couple older fans. It's like, well, 30 years ago we had 3 different starting quarterbacks.
Right.
Well, NFL doesn't really work the same way anymore. It was a lot more ground and pound back then, and it wasn't focused as much on the quarterback back then. Now it's a completely brand new NFL, and if you want to make the argument you should go back to a running style offense, well, then I got another argument for you. But yeah, no, it's such a weird, interesting kind of spot that they're in right now.
Yeah, hearing that, Reed would love to go back in time and play football with those guys. Ground
Oh
and
yeah,
pound.
yeah, okay, ground and pound. Oh yeah, huge into the run game.
What's your question, Reed?
I just asked it.
Oh, my bad. I'm all over the place right now. My next question for you, Mel Kiper, him and his vampire haircut had picked up Broderick Jones to go 16 to the Commanders. What do you think of that pick? I know a lot of people are speculating. Personally, I'm a fan of a cornerback like Christian Gonzalez or Devin Witherspoon there at 16. What are you feeling about Broderick Jones at 16?
Yeah, I think that's fine. I mean, obviously, tackle and corner are both positions of needs, and I think you haven't really found anybody say that these guys are big stretches at these picks. So I think it's a safe pick, and I think they could come in and be successful. Obviously, with Broderick Jones, he's an SEC tackle. I love that. Get the best kind of talent going against that Alabama. He's already ready for the NFL essentially, or not Alabama, Georgia. Sorry.
Same thing.
So yeah, I mean it's the same. I mean, it's the safe route to go. And if you're kind of continue to build the team, it's a good place to go. I don't know if they can really kind of screw up the 16th pick, really. I mean, I think you're going to have a lot of options there. And I think there might be a quarterback there available. And I think if you really love a guy, you should do what you can to go get him. If one falls in your lap at 16, I don't think Sam Howell's one game should stop you from making that pick. Obviously, it's different because of the whole situation with the coaching staff and ownership and all that sort of stuff. It's just a weird year. I'm going to keep saying it all off season. I don't really know what's going to happen, but it's going to be fun. That's for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. So it seems like O-line, cornerback, and possibly a quarterback, as you mentioned, are kind of the leading candidates for that 16th pick. What's another like kind of under the radar need? Maybe not that they're going to spend a first round pick on, but something that you could see possibly day 2 that fans aren't really expecting.
Yeah, I could see just more edge depth, D-line depth, linebacker depth, just depth everywhere. I mean, I think you just need that. I think they've lacked it every single year, and you have guys that are coming up off the practice squad. You have guys that you're calling in from the street that are playing in meaningful games and must-win games, and you just can't do that. You need to have those depth pieces there. So when someone like Cole Holcomb goes down, you aren't picking up John Bostic off the street and David Mayo off. Like, you just – don't have to, depend on a Rashad Wildgoose to come in and play meaningful snaps. And every single year, Danny Johnson comes in and plays meaningful snaps, and he plays pretty well there.
Yeah.
But I think you just need to invest in depth. I've been saying it for so long. They don't do it. They need to do it. And yeah, just a depth position everywhere.
Another question for you to branch off of that. Deron Payne obviously has been a big talking point for a lot of this fan base. There's even some wild speculation that he could be worth a first-round pick in some aspects in trade scenarios. What do you think happens with Deron Payne, and should Washington be trying to shore him up long-term?
It's another one. Again, every day I go back and forth on this. Most fans are going to be like, they're just going to call me crazy for possibly wanting him to let him walk. But I don't see possibly paying him as much with the current ownership situation. I don't know. It's so interesting. They drafted when they drafted Mathis last year in the second round. I thought, okay, that's the Deron Payne replacement.
Right.
They're going to let him walk. I think it's done. He had a great year this year, career year in sacks. PFF grade wasn't great, but screw them. They don't know anything anyway. I think he's a very, very good defensive tackle, is in the top tier of defensive tackles. I don't know if paying two of them top dollar in the NFL is going to allow you to kind of allocate those resources elsewhere. Now, if you have a Sam Howell and you hit on him, you hit on a quarterback on a rookie deal, and you have the chance to make that call and pay him and stuff like that. But you don't know. Like, you don't know if he's the guy. And if you have to pay him big bucks, you're not going to go out and be able to get a big free agent quarterback or whatnot. So I don't know. I think they let him walk. I do. I think they just let him go. And as bad as that is, there's no way you trade him. You literally cannot trade him right now, I don't think, because he's not under contract. You could franchise tag and maybe trade him, but if you're franchise tagging, there's no value there for trades. I mean, NFL doesn't really work the same as MLB and NHL and NBA and all that sort of stuff. So I don't know. They put themselves in a weird spot by not getting this deal done earlier, I think, or trading him earlier. But they've been competitive enough to be like, well, we can't trade you because, we're fighting for a playoff spot. So just, again, weird. Weird is the theme for me right now. Everything weird around the roster building standpoint is just, I don't know.
Yeah, the worst possible thing that could have happened was Fedarian Mathis getting injured when he did, because you don't know how good he's going to be. So that brings a big question for Washington. Are you confident Fedarian Mathis be able to replicate what Deron did? And that's a huge sticking point, man. It's really bad timing. Sorry, Reed.
Yeah. And then let's turn it to PFF. I know that you said PFF can't be trusted. I trust one guy from PFF, and that's you. I trust you. I would trust you with my life if I'm being.
Well, thank you. I don't deserve that, but thank you.
No, probably not. But who are the top three players from offense? Who graded out the highest this past season?
Our top three was Brian Robinson Jr., 82.5, Terry McLaurin, 79.9, and then Antonio Gibson, 76.3.
Okay.
So that was the top three. It was not really close. I mean, the next highest was 71, and that was Leno. So,
and then I think Cosme graded out in 71 as well.
He did. He started when he was playing right tackle earlier in the year. I know a lot of fans weren't a huge fan of it, but he was decent enough. He's a great run blocker. And when they just kept rotating him and then switching him to guard, and that was a mess. It brought his grades down.
It is
okay. So Cosme rated higher at tackle than he did guard. So do you think his future should be at right tackle?
I thought he was a serviceable right tackle. I mean, people like to talk about his arm length, but he was doing a decent enough job. It always looks worse when those interior guys are losing like they are, because then you're forcing the quarterback to scramble out, and it looks like he's giving up the sacks. And a lot of times it's tough to evaluate him when the quarterback is moving out of the pocket so quickly. I think he's good enough right now. He's still young, so when you're moving him to right guard and rotating him to right tackle every other quarter, it just kind of stunts the development a bit. And I think he was doing a good enough job to kind of keep him there and keep him learning. But yeah, right guard didn't work. Rotating him at right tackle and then back to right guard and then back to right tackle didn't work either.
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah, and then
weird.
We got to talk about the one guy that we always talk about whenever you come onto this show, Nick, and obviously him being a former quarterback, we got to talk about him. In Logan Thomas, his future, there's been a lot of speculation. There's a lot of speculation about what's going to happen with Logan Thomas. Washington could save $5 million by releasing him before June 1st. I personally think a contract restructure is most likely what's going to happen. Do you see any changes with Logan Thomas coming?
I think yeah, you definitely at the very least have to restructure that contract. He was pretty poor last year, and I don't know if that's coming back from the injury. That was a pretty brutal injury, and he just did not look like himself at all. He was a huge liability blocking, was not very effective downfield. Sometimes he was open, Heineke was missing him, but not as effective as he was in the past. And I think a restructuring would work best for both sides, but I don't know how you bring him back on his current contract. I mean, just looking at the grades, and he had a 52.0 overall grade last year. That's the second worst of any tight end in the NFL. And I think that's kind of telling on the tight end group as a whole. And John Bates had a little bit of a regression, but he's kind of a tight end 2 type anyway. You're not really going to rely on him to produce in the receiving game. So I don't know. I think you need hopefully a healthier Logan Thomas, but the tight end position has been a kind of a position of need for a while ever since, Jordan Reed.
Yeah. And I've said it so far, almost every episode since the season ended, but it's weird because tight end, like during the offseason, everybody was talking about the tight ends and the young tight ends and how good they were playing during camp. And then the season, you didn't really get much out of them. But let's switch gears here. We did the offense. Who are the top 3 rated players on defense?
Top 3 on defense, Montez Sweat, 86.4.
He
Cameron
was a
Curl,
top
80.
10 edge rusher, right, in the NFL?
Yes, he was. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Cameron Curl, 82.9. And then Jonathan Allen, 80.1. Danny Johnson finished ahead of him, but he played 600 less snaps, so it kind of doesn't really even out as much. But yeah, those are the top 3. Kendall Fuller was kind of close behind, but overall defense is very, very solid.
What about Jamin? Where was he at? Because I know
Jamin was 62.1, which for Jamin Davis is very good, and for linebackers in general, kind of hovering around that average spot is a good spot to be. That's kind of where Cole Holcomb has been in the past. Holcomb finished with a 66 this year, which is, again, kind of where he's been for his career. That's kind of the linebacker play you want. I think you have your 2 linebackers in Holcomb and Davis. Obviously, Holcomb went down with this injury last year, but Jamin Davis was very well improved and just kind of made his job simpler. And he was a kind of a bright spot.
Yeah, and it's crazy because they put more on his plate because after Cole went down, obviously Cam Curl was wearing the green dot for a little bit, but then Jamin took that over. So obviously there was a huge improvement from Jamin, without a doubt. Yeah. That's a great point by you. Now, to wrap this up, Nick, I only have a couple more questions for you. I know you're not a kind of money guy in the sense of knowing what cap savings, all that jazz, but where do you think Cam Curl, what is his worth on the open market?
That's a good question. I think he's proven over these past couple of years, and especially these past games, that he is probably one of the most valuable players on this defense, and I think you can argue the most valuable. I think he is so positionally sound and so smart, and just never making a mistake. Like, you don't ever see him make mistakes. He's not going to be the most athletic. He's not going to be the ball hawking safety, but he is going to always be in the right spot at every single time, and that's what you need when you're playing these more too high shell systems that you see a lot in the NFL. You need him to be in the right position. You need him to kind of help other people be in the right position. And I think on the open market, I don't know if other teams would kind of see the same value that Washington has seen, because, again, when you're on the open market, a lot of teams kind of look at the numbers and all that sort of stuff. And I think he would get the most money here in Washington, and I think they should pay him. I think he deserves it. I think, again, he's always graded high FPFF. And I think he's, in that top tier of safeties, really. I mean, I just think he's that good.
Yeah, it's about time because, like you said, with Deron Payne, bad timing. Well, this is probably be a good time to make sure Cam Curl is done so we don't get in this sort of situation again. My next question for you, Brian Robinson, we kind of talked about him already. His total yards for the season was just south of 900 yards. I think it was like 899. What do you expect with his usage going forward? Because obviously he wasn't healthy to start the season. Do you think that he's going to take over that number 1 role and he's going to out-snap AG by a lot?
I think so. I think that was their plan this year, before what happened earlier in the year with him. I think that was what they were trying to do. And I think what they've done with the running back position these past couple of years has been perfect. It sucks for the running backs themselves, and I hate saying this, but you should be drafting one every 3-4 years, riding out that rookie contract, and you draft another one. And you just keep doing this in the 3rd, 4th round. And it sucks for these guys, but it's just kind of the nature of the position now. Like, it's
Andy Reid has made easy work of that. I mean, LaShawn McCoy, go down the list. I mean, he kills in that category.
Yep. And you see it all the time with teams. Like, I mean, the Chiefs now, they drafted Edwards-Helaire high, not worked out. Isaiah Pacheco, 7th round. Like, you just need these guys that are just going to come in, one cut and go, do exactly what they need to do in their job. And you just need a good offensive line around to make him look even better. But yeah, I think they'll just keep feeding him. I think, especially if they want to really be a run heavy offense, I think you'll see a lot of Brian Robinson. And he was really good last year. I mean, it's kind of what we expected before, his unfortunate injury and all that. And he came back and looked pretty good.
And the highest graded player on offense by Pro Football Focus, even after that injury, which is incredible. Last question for you, off topic a little bit, but obviously it's the conference championship games this weekend. What is your prediction? Who do you think is going to be in the Super Bowl?
If Brock Purdy makes it to the Super Bowl, I'm going to cry. I mean, this guy, there's no way that a team can just luck into somebody like Brock Purdy. And I don't think Brock Purdy's as great as everyone's kind of making out to be. The record, is impressive. He's gotten away with
perfect
a lot.
Offense for him.
He's gotten away with a ton of mistakes that are not showing up in the PFF grade. Obviously, there's a plug for PFF, but it's a not a lose-lose, but I feel like Brock Purdy in the Super Bowl just doesn't make sense in my mind. And obviously, I don't want the Eagles going to the Super Bowl again.
Right.
I think it'd be cool for the Bengals to win it after it just hopefully getting there for a second time in a row. I love Joe Burrow.
Man.
My wife loves Joe Burrow.
I love Joe Burrow too. Good for her.
Yeah, it's a problem in our household right now. I think she loves Joe Burrow more than me. But
yeah. Oh, I know that feeling.
Yeah. Can't blame her.
I would like to see I think a Cincinnati Philadelphia game would be very fun. KC Philadelphia would be very fun. All 4 of those matchups would be really good. So I wouldn't have a complaint. I just feel like Brock Purdy, after what I've watched him do at Iowa State for the past 5 years, watching him start a Super Bowl would blow my mind. Just blow my mind.
Yeah, a year ago today, could you imagine thinking that Brock Purdy was going to be the difference to stopping the Eagles getting the Super Bowl?
I watched 2 games of him after watching him for like 6 years at Iowa State, and I was like, okay, sure.
Kyle Shanahan was licking his chops. He was like, watch. He was like, you guys are not good at evaluating quarterbacks. None of you are in the NFL. I'm going to take him with Mr. Irrelevant. I'm going to take him to the Super Bowl. My goodness, that dude is good at his
It was
job.
A shot at John Lynch, too. He was like, you made me trade up for Trey Lance. Watch what I do with this Mr. Irrelevant.
Hey, now, if Trey Lance becomes available, that was my guy. He was my quarterback 3 behind Lawrence and Fields.
He's had the injury concerns or the injury problems, but with his skill set, he should be dominating in San Francisco. So it sucks that he didn't get a chance, and then this happened with Purdy, but he's available.
Hey, I mean, if they're going to trash him away, one man's trash, another man's treasure.
Right. That's 7th-round pick. I'll throw to your way, John Lynch. Let's go. Let's make it happen. Nick, I can't thank you enough for joining us, brother, on this Thursday evening. Hope you have a go. Enjoy your evening. I always appreciate the time that you have for us, being able to break down the Commanders and looking forward, sir. Have a good one.
Appreciate it. You guys have a good one, too.
You too, Nick. I'll talk to you next time.
Hi, Nick.
Hey, what's up, everybody? We just talked to the man, Mr. Nick Akridge from Pro Football Focus. But now we're re-energizing our prospect breakdown. We haven't done this in some time, obviously leading up to the NFL draft. But we each have a prospect that we're going to break down here, and we are going to give you our thoughts on it. We're not acting as experts. We don't think that we know this guy inside and out. We just looked at him, and this is what we think of them. So, Reed, I actually don't know who your prospect is.
Yeah. So I'm going to go with Anton Harrison, the offensive tackle out of Oklahoma. He's somebody who you've kind of seen him rise up the boards a little bit, as compared to earlier. Earlier, he was kind of like a day 2 pick. Now he's a fringe day 1, early day 2. He's a left tackle. He played right tackle. He's played really all over the line. He started for Oklahoma for the last 3 seasons. He almost kind of reminds you of Trent Williams. And I'm not saying he's Trent Williams, obviously, but his body type and his demeanor, he's not as athletic. He's not as big. He really needs to work on his strength. He's somebody who kind of gets bull rushed fairly easy, but he's played at Oklahoma. He has the positional versatility where he can play either side of the offensive line, and he's somebody who his potential seems to just be like you see it all there with him. Like he was 4 or 5-star recruit coming out of high school. He had another 5-star recruit, Wanya Morris, who was the other offensive tackle, and Anton Harrison just completely put him on the shelf. Wanya Morris is supposed to be a mid to late round pick as an offensive tackle, possibly sliding inside the guard. Anton Harrison is somebody who he's going to go out there and he's going to play. I would not be surprised at all if he gets picked towards the end of round 1, possibly even coming up a little higher if he does do well at the combine. So he's somebody who I'm certainly interested in. If the Commanders, who knows, maybe they trade back. I don't want them to, because I want them taking the best player that they can get right there at 16. But if they trade back, or hey, maybe something happens, he's still there on day 2 and they take a corner in round 1, I'm all for that, because this kid is very good. You can just see it. He's a mauler, and he's very physical, and he's very good in pass sets, as most college tackles are coming out nowadays. He kind of needs to work on his physicality in the run game, but this dude he's an alpha dog, man, and it's somebody who's I'm very interested in.
Did you know I did a film breakdown on him the other day?
Did you?
Yeah, I did, and I absolutely loved it. He's actually my number 1 left tackle on the board. I know a lot of people
really
have other ones. Oh yeah, because one thing being his kick step back, he's very good in that aspect. He's very strong. He's aggressive in a sense. but you didn't see him get beat with some things like other guys do. And I think the one thing for him is hand placement. Because
Right.
a lot of the times it's him trying to he has a hard time readjusting his hands, but when he does readjust his hands, he's able to establish the block. But it's that initial swat that he kind of struggles with.
Right.
But other besides that, he is very potent in the running game. He's used athletically on the outside and in the inside. He's a great, if you're trying to get goal line kind of push, that's the kind of guy you want. I really do like him a lot. He's 6'5", 315 pounds, and a junior. Yeah. I like him.
And that's kind of, it's kind of similar to Paris Johnson in that sense, where Paris Johnson is, the dude has everything that you could want, but his hand placement almost seems to be a little bit off at times. So if there's some things that he can work on, it's kind of similar with Paris Johnson. But also, my phone just died, so I was just like, fuck, who I gotta do? And I just thought of stuff off the top of my head. I didn't have any of my notes there, so I'm sorry.
No, you're good. I did think Paris Johnson, his footwork is not up to par. He is very, very choppy.
No, but you can tell.
Yeah.
He also, this is his first year playing left tackle in the last 2-3 years. So the dude has the ability, but you're right. Yeah, he's interesting because he's got
I think
the tools,
he's going to be a better guard, to be perfectly honest, but he's
yeah.
going to be a very quality guard. The prospect that I'm breaking down today is actually Mel Kiper's own Mr. Broderick Jones, 6'4", 310 pounds. He's a sophomore.
He's fun to watch.
He started 13 games in this past season in 22, gave up 8 hurries, 1 quarterback hit, and no sacks, but only has 22 starts in his college career. Obviously, being at 310 pounds, that's the concerning part. He does get overpowered at times in his pass sets and in the run game. He does lunge to a point. He reminds me a lot of Sadiq Charles, just because of that kind of thinner, tighter
Size.
waist. Yeah,
Yep.
but he's very athletic and being able to move on the outside. For the most part, if you were to draft Broderick Jones, I think that he can be a guard and a very good quality starting guard in this league. I just think that he has to put on a little bit of weight just to be able to hang in the trenches there. But I do not feel that his pass blocking is up to par to play in the NFL. Saw him get beat with a couple rip moves, get hit with a spin move here and there, and that's not something that Anton Harrison was doing. And so, and especially Darnell Wright out of Tennessee. When I watched him play Will Anderson and absolutely just whooped Will Anderson's ass.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, Ryan Fowler, that's your boy right there. I get it. And so with Broderick Jones, I think that there is a reason, a case to say that he could play tackle in the league, but I don't think that he's going to be somebody you can bank and going on to the future with, if that makes sense. So for me, the biggest thing moving forward for Broderick Jones is putting on weight. But I really do like the kid. He's obviously a hard worker. He does have some thump behind him, but a lot of times, if he's going to go against a legitimate good pass rusher in the NFL that knows those vet moves, he's going to get beat, especially when he gets taken off balance. It's really hard for him to recover.
Yeah, and that's the issue with him. It's such little experience, like you said. I mean, he was so highly rated coming out of high school. He was #1 offensive tackle in his class, and you can see. I mean, you see why. I mean, his skill set. You would have liked him to gain a little bit more weight, probably, like you said, and maybe grow a little bit. But I mean, because he does have that about 6'4", 310. Like, he has the body of a guard, but at the same time, he was playing tackle, and he just needs experience. But like, he has everything there. Like, you could totally see him going out there and being good eventually. It's just, I think it was almost a mistake him coming out this early. I think he probably should have stayed one more year. But at the same time, if you're going to be a first-round pick regardless, I mean, how can you pass that up?
You're going to lose Stetson Bennett and others, and I'm sure that he was kind of all right.
Yeah, right. Georgia's going to be what they're doing.
I don't blame him. Him being a junior, obviously, that makes a lot of sense for him. This is where he's a projected first-round pick.
If they tell you you're going to be, if they tell you you're going to be a first-round pick and you're an O-line guy, you're not going to get those huge NIL deals. Go to the NFL.
Yeah, and I will say this: Darnell Wright is my right tackle #1, 6'6", 335 pounds.
So good.
I don't think that he's going to be playing guard in the next level. If he does play guard, he's going to be an All-Pro. But I think that he's going to be a right tackle in this league. And going up against Will Anderson, he ate his lunch. And so if you can do that against Will Anderson going against Alabama, that's when it really makes a mark on me. Like that with Broderick Jones, I watched his tape versus like South Carolina and others. So it wasn't like he was going against the pass rushers that I saw with Darnell Wright, which made me look twice and go, wow, this kid. But Broderick
and Darnell
Jones,
Wright, I'm sorry. Yeah, he's more than likely possibly going to be a day 2 pick. Darnell Wright in the second round. I mean, that's as of right now. He'll be a
late first rounder.
I was about to say, I could totally see him sneaking up in the late first round, but he's somebody who, even if he does go day 2, you can feel confident almost at this point that you can just plug him in at right tackle from day 1 and just be like, start, you're good. Like, he's somebody who that dude is going to play year one. I think he's going to be very good as well. Like he's
Yeah.
just going to be solid.
He's got things to work on. He gets bit on,
Of course,
he gets distracted with like stunts and stuff, and so he gets impatient.
Just give him some Adderall, man.
Just give him some Adderall. Now, let's go to our fan questions before we are joined by our next guest. This is from the Colonel Reed. Why would we not be looking at Daniel Jones on the cheap, considering what he's done to us the past several years?
Yeah, Daniel Jones is a name that you're starting to see floated around a lot more. What's up, JMO? Sick.
Which is unfortunate.
Yeah, no, it really is. And
I think you know that his numbers this year, we all talk about it, like how good he improved this past season. But do you know that I heard on the Junkies, I think it was JP and B Mitch, that his numbers are identical to Tyrod Taylor's first year under Brian Daboll, and being at 15-5 with his touchdown to interception ratio, which is why the Giants are probably thinking twice about it, because they're saying if we can get Daniel to do it, we could probably do something cheaper. But sorry, keep going.
Yeah, no, but that being said, I would not be surprised at all. I know that they didn't pick up his 5th-year option. He also didn't play like he did this year, and he was improved. I mean, but like you said, a lot of that goes into the coaching as well. Hold on, bud. But if Daniel Jones is out there, I think that the Giants are possibly going to want to bring him back on a year deal. But some team is going to take a flyer on him. I could possibly even see the Jets, maybe if they strike out on Aaron Rodgers or somebody, be like, we got to get somebody in here who can possibly run this offense with all these weapons that we have, because old Mormon boy is not cutting the deal, Zach Wilson. So I don't know if I would bring him in. I would rather roll with Sam Howell, because I just hate Daniel Jones. I'm just not. He's just dumb. His face just looks stupid, and it just makes me mad. What are you doing, bud?
I got you, dude. For me, Colonel, the one thing, based on Spot Track, they did a projected market value, and it's looking like his contract is going to be worth 3 years, $78 million. So on average, he's been getting paid $26.2 million per year, which, looking at it with the Carson Wentz deal at 28, you can look at that and say that's probably a good thing to have with Daniel Jones compared to what happened with Carson Wentz, right? So I'm not going to screw things up in that sense. I just don't think from Daniel Jones' standpoint that he wants to leave. Like, why would you? This is the first time you've had success, first year head coach. He's probably going to even take a pay cut. I could see him probably going down to 20 just to stay with the Giants. But we'll see when that comes up to it. That's a great question, Colonel. And I'll get to your next question after our next guest, who's now joined by Mr. Ian Cummings of the East-West Shrine Bowl. Thank you for joining us, brother. How you doing?
I'm doing good. It was a bit of a whirlwind getting this settled today, man. It's crazy flying in, losing a couple hours and, getting everything settled. But it's great to be here, man. It's a great event. You can already tell players are rolling in. The measurements are going to be in soon, and we'll have that up on PFN. But it's a great showcase. Happy to be here.
Dude, I always love picking your brain, Ian, because it's hard to get you on here. But who are some guys that you have your eye on at the East-West Shrine Bowl that other fans of the Commanders or NFL fans should be looking at as enticing?
Yeah, well, I think my philosophy is never leave any stone unturned, right? So any name that you don't know, right, like stay curious, right? But I think for the Commanders especially, if you're looking for, the positions that come to mind for me, offensive line, definitely one that comes to mind first. Corner, it's a really deep cornerback class. Even if you're not looking for an immediate starter, there's a few guys at the Shrine Bowl that I really like who could, go on to fulfill good roles. Wide receiver, always one to keep an eye on. I think, at offensive line, Malisala Omave Lalu from Oregon is one guy that I really like. He's really toolsy, 6'7", powerful, athletic.
Wow.
And he's got some really nice moments of functional power on tape where he can displace guys. I think he's got some projected versatility too from the interior. So he's a guy that I'm watching. I think Antonio Mafi from UCLA is another one, really heavy-handed blocker on the interior. If you're looking for a guard upgrade, maybe not the most athletic guy, but I think he's a good athlete and he's got heavy hands too. It's just the length isn't quite there. But if you're looking for an interior guy, he's one to watch. At corner, Nick Jones from Ball State is a guy that I really like. He's 6 foot, around 190, but he's got over 33-inch arms. So really crazy disruption radius. He's really twitchy, high energy athlete, fluid enough, explosive enough for his size. And he's competitive. I think this past year he had 2 interceptions and 13 pass deflections. So very productive player as well. And then you're looking at, if you're looking for a slot guy, right? Kytrell Clark, Travius Hodges Tomlinson, both of those guys, very high energy athletes, a little undersized, but they're chippy, they're physical, they play above their frame. and you'd love to see that from those guys. So, I could go on and on. It's a great roster. I think there's talent up and down the board. Zay Flowers from Boston College is obviously the headliner at wide receiver with his talent. But leave no stone unturned, right? I think there's a lot of really good defensive line depth too at edge and interior, which Washington could use. So yeah, a lot of great names, but those are the ones that come to mind first off.
Yeah, just in case anybody wondering, like Ian obviously is very well articulate and intelligent when it comes to the draft. The dude has been studying the draft since the end of the 2022 draft. Just to let you know, he's been doing his homework.
Yeah, and these rosters are interesting too when you look at the East-West Shrine Bowl, because I mean they've got some pretty good, they got some legit talent out there. Like usually you want to think about the the North-South game going on, but I mean you got Dorian Thompson-Robinson, you got Muhammad Ibrahim, like you said, you have Zay Flowers. I mean there's some legit guys. Who are some quarterbacks that you want to take a look at?
Yeah, for sure. And I think real quick, the depth of this class, I think just overall is absurd. And I think part of that has to do with the COVID year, right? A lot of guys came back, and so we're kind of seeing that roll over and kind of that overage in the next year into the next year. So I think we're going to see really a lot of depth in the next class and the class beyond that too, because of that COVID year, the extra eligibility. So it's fun. But at quarterback, Dorian Thompson-Robinson to me is definitely the guy to keep an eye on. I think if you're looking for a guy who's developmental, who has the tools, right, he's very high up there in that regard. I mean, elite athlete. You see it on tape, his ability to evade and create for himself. He's got good arm talent too. He's got good arm elasticity, good arm strength as well. And he's experienced. I mean, that's one thing that shows up with him is that some guys are really raw, some guys are projects, right? And he's got some ironing out to do with the decision-making and the mechanics still. But that experience at UCLA does show up, when he can actually, move protections and stuff, and he knows what he's seeing, right? So I think it's going to be interesting to see how he integrates into this setting, this week with the NFL coaches, with a new environment. If he can impress, he's got the tools to potentially rise up into, I'd say, early to mid day 3, right? I think at this point he's still a depth QB, but he's got the highest ceiling of all the QBs in the Shrine Bowl. So I would definitely take a look at him. I think Tommy DeVito from Illinois is another guy to watch. He's a guy who at Syracuse, didn't always get his due, right? And he wasn't, he needed change of scenery, to kind of break out of his shell. Some guys need that. But at Illinois this past year, he was very efficient. He showed good competitive toughness. He's a guy, doesn't quite have the tools that Thompson-Robinson does. But if you're looking for depth in this QB class, a guy who could maybe go on and be a good backup, right? I could see him being that. I think Aiden O'Connell is another one.
Yep.
O'Connell's kind of your prototypical, your cerebral guy, right? He's not going to make you miss. He's not going to juke you out of your shoes or anything. And he doesn't have a great arm either, but, he's very smart with the football. He's very good in the pocket, managing the pocket and placing it effectively, right? So I think making the right decisions. He's another guy who, you want him in your QB room. You don't want, he's probably not going to be a starter, right? But I think, if you need to put him in there, that he can keep things stable and keep things rolling. So I think you have some different brands of QBs in this group, which is exciting. You get to look at different player types. Think Tim DeMorat from, I think,
Fordham. Yep.
Another one who's going to especially when those guys make the leap to the Shrine Bowl, in this new environment, right? It's very interesting to see how they integrate, right? So I think it's an interesting quarterback class. I think DTR is definitely the headliner, right, with his tools, but all of them have different avenues to succeed at the NFL level.
Right. And that's something I'm always interested at in these bowl games. It's to see which quarterback goes in there. You kind of saw it last year with Kenny Pickett. He went out there, he was the alpha dog. As soon as he stepped out on the field, everybody said it was just different with him out there as opposed to like Malik Willis or these people. So it's going to be very interesting to see what quarterback kind of takes command out there.
Then that's a great segue, sir. But Ian, let's talk about the linebackers in this draft. And I don't want to look at the top first 2 rounds, but from the 3rd to maybe like the 6th, talk to me about some linebackers that Washington could be looking at to add some depth.
Yeah, I think, this is another class where linebacker especially is really unsettled past that point. I think there's a lot of depth, though, that kind of goes overlooked, right? I think, it's not a class that quite has that top guy, right? Like my top guy is Drew Sanders. Even him, I kind of have outside my top 30, right? But still good talent. But I do think the value of this class is going to be in that mid-round range where Washington might have them. So in that range, I would think, a few guys that come to mind for me at the Shrine Bowl. Mohamed Diabate from Utah is one, 6'3", over 220. But he's an athletic guy. He played at Florida, and he's very natural in coverage, but he's also explosive coming downhill, right? So if you need a guy with size and length and athleticism, right, he's a guy who's trending up, and I think he's shown that. Anthony Orji from Vanderbilt is another guy. Had, I think, over 100 tackles this
I want
past
that
year.
jersey.
I know, right? I know, right?
His last name's Orgy.
Yeah, it is.
My God, that's one of my favorite
There's
pastimes.
a lot of wordplay opportunities with that one. That's for sure. That's for sure. Robert
sorry,
Griffin is
give him
getting excited over
69
here
or something tight.
Ian's all classy. And here we are. Sorry.
Exactly. Hey, I got to stick to the script, all right, draft. But hey, as a prospect, man, he's fun. He's another guy who's explosive coming downhill. He's an attacker, right? He's a little reckless at times. You gotta coach that into him, but he's another guy who's got a strong frame, very explosive. Very disruptive in the backfield, and that's a good combination to have. So I think those are two guys in the linebacker group that stand out to me in the Shrine Bowl group. I do think you have a few on-ball linebackers who could intrigue, right? Yasir Abdullah from Louisville is another guy who's, around 6'1", 240, but one of those really good pass rush specialists, right? So I'd keep an eye on him as well. But those are two that come to mind. And then another guy that I want to throw out there, he's at the Senior Bowl, Dorian Williams from Tulane, I think. He's a guy who's around 6'1", 230, but he's got over 33-inch arms, I think. So proportional length, right? It allows you to disrupt easier, kind of shed blocks a little easier. But he's another guy who accelerates quickly, attacks in the box, and he's very instinctive in coverage too. And he's shown that he can make plays and drop back in space, right? So I think that versatility is what you're looking for, and that's something that can give Washington more flexibility at an important position.
Yeah,
Right.
Now to wrap this up, Ian, I have a couple more questions for you. But Drew Sanders, was he playing hurt this year by your knowledge?
I'll have to go back and look. I know he was pretty consistently on the field for Arkansas, but maybe, guys are always dealing with stuff, right? They're always dealing with nagging injuries.
I just saw that big brace on his left leg.
Yeah. Yeah, I think he may have an injury in his system. I'll have to go back and check. I'll be honest with you. It's been about a month, I think, since I did my eval on him. But he's a guy who, if you're looking for a hybrid edge rusher, linebacker, right, a versatile guy, he's got it.
I was very impressed by his hips and how flexible he was in the passing game.
Yeah.
Looks like he'd be a great cover linebacker.
Kyle loves his hips.
Mhm.
Kyle's always talking about him.
Now, my next question for you. I know that you're all class, Ian. I know it's going to be hard for you to do, and you want to wait till the measurables are done. They go to the combine. But if you can, what is your ranking for the top 5 cornerbacks in this draft?
Top 5 cornerbacks. Yeah,
There's some good ones, by the way.
At this point, we do have, most of the information, right? And a lot of guys, when you see a measurement come in at the NFL Combine, it doesn't shock you, right? Like you can see it on tape. Like Joey Porter Jr., for instance, like we know he's going to have insane arm length, right? Well, I don't need a number to tell me that, right? It's the exact quantification, but usually you can kind of see what's going on. But my top 5 corners, as I have it right now, Christian Gonzalez, Oregon, is number 1. Joey Porter Jr. is number 2, really close between him and Devin Witherspoon from Illinois for number 3. And I believe number 4, I want to say I got Clark Phillips. Don't quote me on that. I got to go back and check. But Clark Phillips is there. I know there's a few guys in the running for the 5th spot. Jalen Jones from Texas A&M is one of them. Calais Ringo, obviously size, speed freak. But Jalen Jones from Texas A&M is one guy to keep
Very
an eye on.
interesting.
6'2", 205. Former 5-star recruit, super twitchy, fluid, free mover in space for his size, and he's physical too. He's a very good run support corner. And I do think that, he doesn't have a lot of ball production, but I think part of that is because he just dissuaded quarterbacks from throwing to his side of the field entirely. So I think, if he gets more opportunities, he's got the traits to convert, right? So those are the guys that I have. I'm a big fan of Witherspoon, big fan of Porter, really big fan of Gonzalez. I think that
So are we. Those are our 3 guys.
Yeah, those are and especially with Witherspoon, having that versatility to play the slot, right? That's a big thing for him. So I think
I love Ian. That's why I love him.
I really think Witherspoon and Gonzalez.
Here's the thing with this corner class too. It's not just the top end guys. This is insanely deep. Like if you want to double dip, you can get a guy in round 1 and round 2, get a guy in round 5, round 6, and there's guys that could become really good players, man. And then Brian Branch from Alabama as well, slot corner, safety hybrid. I mean, that guy is a top 10 prospect for me, Brian Branch. So you need a slot guy. There's a lot of different flavors in this class.
Deontay Banks from Maryland is somebody who's starting to fly up the boards a little bit.
Jacorian Bennett as well, man.
Yeah, right.
You could go on and on, man. I could sit here for hours. I won't do it, but I could. I mean,
we would need a 2-hour special for us to go over these draft prospects. We could talk for days.
It's a very good year to need a corner. I'll say that.
Yeah,
I'm glad to hear that because Washington desperately does need some extra help because we got some good guys in the building, but the depth is deteriorating. Last one, real quick. Let's just say Washington does go with DB early on in this draft. What is the offensive line looking like? Because a lot of the fan base will say we need a tackle, but more predominantly we need the inside guy. So in those middle rounds, is there anybody that Washington should target?
Yeah, the depth isn't quite as much there with that position group. I will say there are a lot of guys who, played tackle in college and maybe could convert inside that you're looking at, right? I think, but if you want an immediate starter, you're going to have to go early, I think. Okay. And, you can always find diamonds in the rough, right? That's always notwithstanding, right? But it's a little more with the corner class, for instance, like you could find guys in round 4, round 5, round 6 who could end up starting reps in their rookie season. So with the interior class, not quite as much there. If I had to throw out a couple names, Steve Avila from TCU is one that comes to mind. He played center. And I know Chase Roulier's future is a little uncertain with Washington, right? So, if you want a guy who's got the versatility to play center or guard, Steve Avila from TCU, 6'4", 330. Dude is powerful. I mean, he just punches you and you go back, and it's insane. He's got really heavy hands, but he's really wide blocker. Not an elite athlete, but he's just so wide and so strong. It's really tough to get around him. And in a phone booth, right, I want that guy displacing. I want that guy holding guys back. So Steve Avila is one that I really like. I think that he's a good one. Jarrett Patterson from Notre Dame is another one with that center guard versatility, that flexibility if you need it. A little bit different stylistically. He's more athletic, smooth, flexible. He's got enough strength, right? He's not quite that powerhouse that Avila is, but he can hold the fort down. He's a high IQ blocker. I like what I see from him too. So those are a few. I think Joe Tippmann from Wisconsin as well.
Yes,
he's a center. He's a center,
6'6", he's big. Yeah,
he's got positional versatility. Like you can move him around if you want to, right? Like I would probably keep him at center because he's got insane potential there. I mean, he's explosive, he's powerful, and at 6'6" too. You mentioned that. It can be harder for those guys to acquire leverage and drop their pads, but he does it really well, and he drives through with his hips and his lower body. So you see that, like, you can keep him at center, or you can move him to guard, and he can be a legit playmaker there. So Joe Tippmann from Wisconsin, I've been high on him through the entire process, and I was really excited to see that he declared because I think wherever you put him on the interior, he can be a road grader. He's a monster.
Yeah, that's why I like having you on here, Ian. You just push in as much information as possible, and I absolutely love it. I can't thank you enough for joining us, brother. I know you're a very busy man this weekend, and you were able to fit us in, luckily enough, because you're so very kind to us. Ian, just before you go, I'd like to plug your social media handle, just in case anybody watching hasn't followed you yet and would like to.
Hey, yeah, you can follow me, IC_draft on Twitter. We got a lot of content coming this weekend with the Shrine Bowl. It's going to be a fun one, introducing you to a lot of great guys off the field, but also talented prospects in this class. So excited to get through it. Hope to see you there.
Absolutely. Thanks, Ian. Have a good night, brother. Enjoy the weekend. Enjoy the football, brother.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Thank you, man. All right, everybody. We just spoke with the man, Mr. Ian Cummings. A treasure trove of information.
Yeah, I had never really looked at the East-West Shrine Bowl rosters, but if you look at especially the East's cornerback room, they have obviously Travius Hodges-Tomlinson, Keitrell Clark from Louisville, Mekhi Garner from LSU. They've got some legit guys over there that are going to be pretty good NFL players. So I'm excited to watch East-West.
Now let's move on to our fan questions to wrap up this episode. We're up against the bill here. But this one's from Tim Towner in the Discord chat server.
There he is.
His question is, Ron Rivera hired Scott Turner as OC knowing that he had little to no game experience in calling plays. Was that a mistake? And do you think he feels pressure to hire an experienced play caller? Do Zampese, Studsville, London, and Brown have a shot? Or at this point, is Shermer really the only candidate being considered? And will they still try and interview Roman, Leftwich, Lynn, Caldwell, and Reich? So I know it's 5 different questions. So let's start it off. Was it a mistake to hire Scott Turner as the OC with no play calling experience?
No. I think Scott Turner has always been considered a decent young mind. I mean, even the season before, when he was with Carolina, he called plays for the final half of the season. He did a pretty good job. Then he came here and he showed flashes, man. He showed ability of what he could be, but sometimes you do that, man. You want to take a risk on somebody, especially somebody that and that you're confident with.
The pedigree, the dad behind it.
Right.
Obviously.
No, yeah. And I mean, shit, rumors are. Did you see that? Scott Turner's getting head coaching interviews.
No,
right
no,
now.
that was a fake account, bro.
Okay, thank God. I was like, this. How is that even possible?
Yeah, so the
thank
the
God.
at
I was like, that like
Heineke's
made my
burner.
heart drop. I was like, what?
No, that's just funny. It would be hilarious
No, but
if
that's
it worked
true
out like
too,
that.
though, because I know that for a fact. He's getting head coaching jobs.
I won't say it was a mistake, Tim, to hire Scott Turner without any play calling experience. If we could think back, Jay Gruden promoted Sean McVay to calling plays without any experience there, and obviously that bloomed to be something successful, right? And so there's situations where it works out for you. I think the one issue being it was I think a lot of the times the familiarity and relativity like plays too much into some of these decisions, and I think that was the mistake with Scott Turner, just because it being the kind of olive branch of Norv in a sense, but obviously that did not pan out to be awesome. But obviously Scott wasn't playing with the best talent here. Now, do you think that Ron Rivera feels pressure to hire an experienced play caller because of that?
So I would think since he's on the hot seat, I would think he would want to bring somebody in who has a good track record. At the same time, I really don't think he has a choice right now. I think it's just like with the ownership thing up in the air and people knowing that they may or may not get more than a year and the quarterback situation. I think that you would like to possibly get somebody who needs to prove themselves, who maybe doesn't have the most experience, but wants to come out there and they're confident in their abilities and they want to show that what they can do. But if I'm Ron Rivera, I'm going to bring somebody in here who has a track record. I just don't think it's that easy. I think it's a lot harder than it seems.
Exactly, because the people with the track record typically have choices to be able to go, and obviously people have commented on here and saying, well, you stop saying nobody wants to come here, still 32 jobs. I understand that, and I totally get that. I'm just 100%. Saying, compared to LA, the Chargers, if you had to choose between the two as an OC, what are you going to choose, right?
Right, work with Justin Herbert or Sam Howell.
Right. I don't think that Ron Rivera feels pressure to hire an experienced play caller. I feel like he is pressured to find a good play caller. And that's going to be the concern, is like getting a good play caller that will come into these circumstances and do well with the system here without forcing Sam Howell to learn 3 different systems in 3 years. And I feel like that is probably the cog into this thing, is not overloading Sam Howell.
I didn't even think about that. That's right. True.
I've told that to Hall, and I know what he said, but it is what it is, man. But now this next question is from Tony Franchise. Thank you, Tony, in the Discord. How do you feel about Rivera asking San Francisco for permission to interview Anthony Lynn for the OC job?
Dude, I love that. I love Anthony Lynn. There's a reason he was a head coach. Anthony Lynn, he's a very good offensive mind. He's proven that's why he became a head coach in the NFL. He had some success at both. I mean, he had some decent seasons out there with the Chargers. Or a decent year. He's somebody that the players really seem to like. Every player that plays for him, it seems likes him. Of course, I don't know. I haven't dove too deep into him, but I love that. I mean, he's somebody who's proven, and who's somebody who needs a second shot, needs redemption, and he's coming. He was just working with Kyle Shanahan. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly what I was going to say. Exactly what I was going to say. I absolutely love it, because it seems like they are interviewing a lot of people, and that's exactly what you want.
And people from good teams,
right? And so, like, you want to be able to pick the brain of Anthony Lynn. Say, hey man, so what'd you learn in San Fran, bro? Like, let me pick your brain a little bit. And that part I do absolutely love. And giving an opportunity to Anthony Lynn to be an OC here, I would not be mad at it. Just because he does bring that pedigree of being a head coach. And that doesn't mean that what happened as a head coach means he's going to be a bad OC. I don't think that's going to be the case. A lot like Jim Tomsula. He's a fantastic, elite defensive line coach. But if you ask him to be a head coach, he's, looks like a chicken with his head cut off, essentially. Right. Now, this next question, Tony Franchise. And this one was popular in the Discord chat server. Great question, Tony. Who are your top 3 free agent targets to bring to the team?
See, that one's tough. So number 1, I mean, does it count? Like, we should put Daron Payne there at number 1, right? Because technically, like, he is a free agent, right? Do you think that counts or no?
No.
Well, no. I mean, because I don't have the list in front of me. You didn't prepare me for this question, Kyle.
Oh, my bad.
No, I'm gonna go with, depending on if he's there or not. I don't know. I would think he would re-sign, but their money's going to be tight, man. So you got to think that somebody like Orlando Brown or a Mike McGlinchey, somebody like that an offensive tackle that, especially like McGlinchey, can go in there and play right tackle, but I would imagine he's going to re-sign with San Francisco. Orlando Brown can play either side of the ball. He's proven he's been very effective at both, but I would imagine that Kansas City's going to want to wrap him up. So that's a little bit tough. And then Go ahead and name another one. So let me think of another one real fast.
I got you. For me, my number one is Isaac Semejo, the guard from Philadelphia. Started 15 games this season. Obviously, is a big dude, and most likely they're not going to be able to retain him. His market value is sitting about $5.5 million, and I feel like that is somebody you could plug in here that's coming from a good running system. They run greater. Isaac Semejo, I think, would be a really good addition to this offensive line. That for cheap, and also he's relatively young. I think 29 years old. Obviously, he is getting up there, but you need somebody to come in and be productive for you. And obviously, starting 15 games this season kind of shows you that he could really help. And he doesn't have that much wear and tear on his body because he's been like, this year was really when he started starting games. And so it's not like he has wear and tear on his body. He's still relatively young in that sense. The next one for me is Emmanuel Mosley from San Francisco. He's 26 years old, and I think that's somebody that you could bring in here to add some stability to that depth group. That's somebody coming from a good system with D'Amico Ryans and company. I feel like that's somebody you could bring in here and feel good about that quality of depth signing. The other one is Nick Needham from Miami, the cornerback. He's 26 years old, and his snaps went down this year. So what that tells me is that this is a dude that had over like 60 tackles in 2021. He obviously Brian Flores leaves, who's a DB coach in his route, and so he plays well for him. And then Mike McDaniel comes in, and all of a sudden his snaps drop. And so I feel like that's somebody that could walk away from Miami, another depth signing that could really help you. Last one I have, I know you asked for 3, but I'm giving you 4 just because I feel like it. Azeez Al-Jari, I think from the linebacker from the San Francisco 49ers, 25 years old, had 100 tackles in 2021. I feel like that's somebody you, as a depth piece, you want to add in for relatively cheap. You can go and get, and they're young, coming from a good system, working next to Fred Warner. I feel like that's somebody you could really depend on.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, there's some of these top corners like a Jamel Dean, somebody like, what are you doing, weirdo? But also just to keep it with the interior, man, somebody like Ben Powers from Baltimore, somebody that can go inside, play guard, because we need 2 guards right now, and we're probably going to need a center as well. So it's tough, and that's if you want to keep Cosme at right tackle, where of course PFF thinks he will be best. So
Right.
It's tough, but there's a lot of good options out there, assuming that some of these guys don't resign with their teams.
Yeah, how would each of you fix this team realistically, keeping in mind financials this offseason, meaning personnel additions and or subtractions? This is from Jeff Miles on our Discord chat server. Thank you, Jeff.
Go ahead. That started cutting out.
For me, realistically, and being able to fix this team, I don't think the team really does need to be fixing per se. They are building in the right direction. They do need to get over the hump. That being said, I feel like adding some aggression, some big ability to the defense is going to be huge, but also on the offensive line. And so I want to get a road grader. I want to get some aggressiveness added to this offensive line, either through draft or free agency. Go and get that guy, and you have to stabilize the front offensive line. Because the next thing I would do, Jeff, is try to find out what's going on with these injuries. Look at Philadelphia this year. They had barely any injuries. And for the 3rd straight season, we are just demoralized. Half our roster is gone. But when you look at the injury report, it looks like an essay, and it doesn't even include the guys that were put on IR in the previous weeks. That has to be corrected. We have to figure out a way to extend these guys' play and get them to producing more in a longer time, because our team is getting just demoralized every single year, and we got to figure out why.
Yeah, I think number one, you got to shore up the offensive line, especially with a young quarterback going up there, but also getting an offensive coordinator figured out, getting somebody where, like, if Ron has success this year, and I think that it's going to be, we know that the defense is going to be good. We know Jack Del Rio is fine, but the offense, like building Sam Howell, and I do think that it is a concern, him learning another system possibly, but bringing somebody in that really just works well with a young quarterback, somebody that can kind of get the most out of Sam Howell so he can be successful. And yeah, just building up that team around him, man. We have so many good skill players, so many good players on defense. It's just kind of like the O-line and quarterback you kind of got to get more out of, and hope for the best.
Yeah, now we're going to finish it with the best. This is the Colonel's second question to us. Taylor Heinicke was valuable because he knew Scott Turner's system and he motivated the locker room. Scott Turner is gone. Why bother retaining Heinicke when we're going to have an entirely new offensive scheme? There are some quality backups becoming available. Names like Andy Dalton and Jacoby Brissett come to mind.
Yeah, Jacoby Brissett's somebody
I love Jacoby.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, Jacoby Brissett's somebody who I'd be super interested in. But I mean, that is a fair point. I think that's a good point. I do think that Heineke winning over the locker room does still play a big role in it. I think that the guys really, really like him. But yeah, I mean, you're kind of right. I mean, his entire NFL career has kind of been based off of being with Scott Turner. So it's going to be very interesting to see what he does. Does he follow Turner? If Turner goes anywhere, would the team even listen to Turner about bringing him in? Because it doesn't. Who knows what position Turner's going to have? But yeah, I don't know. I would still like to bring him back, but I could see why he wouldn't be brought back.
Well, and this brings up my point in why we should retain Taylor, because I'm sure that thought is running through Taylor's mind at the moment. I could go get my payday, but is it really going to benefit me going to a new scheme that I'm not familiar with? But would you rather want to stay in this locker room? I feel like the pay cut from Taylor could be the difference maker here in a similar contract to what he signed before, just because he wants to stay with the team. I'm not going to say only $1 million, but maybe something that it can be done, like $4 to $5 million. I don't think that is horrible to ask of a backup quarterback that you can get out of it. I'm pretty sure Taylor would really appreciate the 400% increase of pay. So I'm all about it, dude. Let's get it. Let's kick those tires on that. I know that people have their thoughts about Taylor. It's just, I know he brings that kind of distraction element, but the fact is, for a team that has gone through quarterbacks after quarterbacks multiple every season, I don't feel like we should be letting guys just walk away out of the room and having to repair that problem with completely new dudes. You know what I mean? And that's the kind of concern that I have. But I understand why people want to move on from Taylor, because most likely he will not be adjusting to the new scheme. But one thing I will say is I'm not going to doubt the kid anymore. I think that he can achieve whatever he puts his mind to. And if he has to learn a new system, I think he's more than capable of doing so.
Yeah.
If there's anything that Taylor brings, it's his brain. No disrespect to Taylor. I know he has great legs and everything, but I'm just saying he's very, very smart, and that obviously has a lot to do with it.
Great legs.
Great legs. All right, everybody, that's going to wrap us up for this episode. I really appreciate everyone for your contributions. Thank you to Ian Cummings and Nick Akridge. We definitely got a lot of info out of this episode. Really appreciate all you guys. Ken Johansson, if you hear this, brother, thinking of you, sending my prayers out to you. Yeah, keep being strong, my brother. All right, everybody, we will see you guys after the championship weekend. Oh, who do you think's going to the Super Bowl? Real quick.
49ers and Bengals.
You think?
I don't know. I mean, the AFC could go either way, but I just think
it's going to be the Bengals versus the Eagles in the Super Bowl. Unfortunately,
I don't know, man. San Fran's still rolling.
And I will say this: good. The Eagles have really never had to play against an elite opponent in one of these shootouts before. You know what I mean? Where they actually had to play that chess game all season long. They really just ran down people and just killed them. But they've never had to play that chess match of being able to respond. So I do think that is probably one of the funnier aspects of this weekend's matchup with them is can the Eagles actually contend in these prototypical kind of elite games? And that's what a big question. But I got the Eagles and Bengals. I think this is Joe B's year, man. The dude's just on it.
Yeah. Yes, he is.
All right, everybody. We'll see you. Have a good weekend. Please be safe. Appreciate you guys. Please like and subscribe to the channel so you get notified when anything new is uploaded. We appreciate you guys. We'll see you next week. I'm Kyle.
And I'm a deeply closeted straight man.
Yes, you are. All right, everybody. Washington Football. Woo! What's up, everyone? This is Kyle from the Burgundy Zone. We are releasing our own merch to support the show. If you want to rock the Burgundy Zone logo or you want to see Reed's face on your shirt, we got it. We're starting with t-shirts, hoodies, and zip-up. So if you're a fan of the show, make sure you snag one before they are gone. Check out the link in our bio on Instagram, or you can find the link in the description of the video. Thanks again for all your support. Until next time.